The Berlin airlift began at the end of June. The Americans called it Operation Victuals. The British, Plane Fare. The airlift had to deliver 2,000 tons of supplies a day. Without it, West Berliners couldn't survive. They had coal for only 45 days and food for only 36. Thousands of Berliners found jobs and one hot meal a day working for the airlift. Each of the larger planes carried 9 tons.
We could unload each plane in roughly 7 minutes. That was 9 short tons of coal.
The British hired civilian operators.
Main field was busier than ever this week as airlift traffic was suddenly bolstered by fresh squadrons. Here a group of valiant young pilots talk over the day's operation.
Mensch, bei dem Wetter willst du starten? Na klar, Mensch, wir hier warten auf mir.
The blockade and the airlift went on.
We flew everything. I mean, medical supplies, newsprint, but the coal was the biggest thing, and it was the biggest problem, too. The coal dust would seep in on the floors and the control cables, make it difficult to control the airplane. So we flew with our escape hatches out in the back to suck out the dust.
Big Easy 6-4, I have you in contact over the Tempelhof range. If you'll pick up a heading now to get you over the planter beacon, coming down very nicely. Now you're starting to go a little bit above your glide path.
Airlift pilots could fly up to 3 missions every day. An American pilot brought his own 8mm movie camera.
I went back to Berlin to get this picture. Inside the barbed wire, kids came up on the other side of the barbed wire, looked at me in the uniform, came up and started talking to me. How many sacks of flour you got? You know, how's it going to be tomorrow? They got off the subject of flour very quickly, on the subject of freedom. They said, look, he said, someday we'll have enough to eat. Just give us a little. Just don't give up on us when the weather gets bad. We'll have enough. But if we lose our freedom, we may never get it back. And these kids were 8 to 14 years old. They blew my mind with their maturity and understanding of what was important.
Halvorsen promised the children that he would return with chewing gum and chocolate dropped from tiny parachutes.
It was amazing all the things they brought over in their planes. I still remember my youngest boy was there. When American soldiers dropped little parachutes with sweets, chewing gum and chocolate.
Word of Halvorsen, the candy bomber, spread quickly. He was summoned to see his commanding officer.
He really chewed me out. And then he reached into the counter, pulled out a newspaper, and there on the front page was an airplane with parachutes coming out of it. He says, you almost hit a German newspaper man in the head with a candy bar in Berlin yesterday. And he's got this story all over the world. He said the general read it and called me to find out what was going on. I didn't know anything about it. I'll never get promoted. Why didn't you tell me? I said, I didn't think you'd approve it, sir. He says, you're right, but the general thinks it's a good idea.
We won't forget to blow against the wall.
Operation Victuals, the American code name for the airlift, was working at last, thanks to an unusually mild winter. On Easter Sunday 1949, a record 13,000 tons was airlifted in 24 hours. The gamble had worked. Berlin could be supplied indefinitely by air. The Soviets had failed to drive the British, Americans and French out of Berlin. The Allied counter-blockade was hurting the Soviet zone. On May 12, 1949, Stalin called it quits.
As midnight nears, tension mounts at the British frontier control post. Familiar with the old Russian habit of changing their minds when it suits them, seasoned campaigners could not quite grasp this new mood of cooperation. As on the stroke of 12, the barrier goes up and a British jeep leads the race into Berlin.
Many people thought the ending of the Berlin blockade meant an end to the Cold War. August 29, 1949. The Soviets detonated their first atomic bomb. The American nuclear monopoly was over. The world was now split down the middle by two competing superpowers. At its heart lay a divided Germany and a divided Berlin.